Good morning, Cove Cougars. This is Miss Jacobs here with Cove's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity Committee, here to bring you another vocab word. And today we're going to talk about race and racism. These, again, are our vocab words that the DEI is bringing it to you in your classroom via the morning announcements. Race and racism. Let's talk about this. Are these words you know, or are they new? Because race and racism, they're a big part of our world and our daily lives. And really, they're super important to talk about and understand, to really kind of understand the world around us and to better understand current events. And again, the things happening in the world right now. So I'm excited to be here to talk to you about these things. So let's start by just looking at your own skin, right? How would you describe your skin color? Is everyone kind of taking a look? I would say mine is like beigey, right? With some like olive. I would say an olive beige would be how I would describe my skin color. What do you think? Tell your neighbor. Turn to your neighbor, talk to them. And then why don't we go ahead and think about your hair. What color is your hair? Is it straight, wavy, curly? I straightened mine today, so this isn't totally indicative of my natural hair, right? It's probably a little bit more wavy. But yeah, I have generally brown, wavy hair. What about you? These are the things, our skin color and our hair color and texture. These are some of the ideas that help us form this definition of race. And race is the idea that the human species is divided into groups on the basis of inherited physical traits, such as skin color, hair texture, some of our facial features, and our eye formation. These are the physical things we notice about each other when we're meeting someone new and we're learning about someone. And noticing things about other people is how we start, it's how our brain learns, right? It's how we learn who someone is and what they're all about. And it's how we learn about each other. So it's totally fine to notice other people's features, right? So long as we celebrate those things that we notice, right? Here's something really interesting. Babies have the ability to recognize racial differences from as early as 3 months old. I don't know if you remember when you were 3 months old, but that is my son Avraham. We call him Avi. That's a picture of him when he was 3 months. And can you believe that at that tiny little age, he could have looked at two different people and noticed that their races were different? That blew my mind. And then research also shows that preschool and elementary age children can start showing their preferences for or against different race groups. So again, I brought in a picture of Avi at his daycare. Now he's a little young. He's almost 3, right? But that between 3 and 5 is really that preschool age, right? And that's when kiddos can start to notice those differences and start making decisions about who they prefer to be around. Interesting, right? I want to pause. Is anyone uncomfy? Because we're talking about differences, and it's okay to do that. It might feel a little awkward, right? We're talking about skin color, which feels like something maybe we don't talk about. But here's the deal. The more we do it, the better we're going to get at it, and the better we're going to get at understanding each other and really celebrating differences versus being uncomfortable about them, right? So I'm here to ask you, what's your race? The 5 races as indicated on the US 2020 census were white, Black or African American, Native American or Alaska Native, Asian, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, or other. And then being of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin was designated as an ethnicity. This is kind of tough. Do you know where you fall into? Are you maybe a combination of a few things? And then also ethnicity. What am I talking about? Ethnic distinctions generally focus on things such as cultural characteristics like language, history, religion, and customs. So that's kind of how we look at race and ethnicity a little bit differently. And because I was confused when I didn't see Hispanic or Spanish origins under race, I was like, where did that go? But it makes a little bit more sense listing them as ethnic groups. Even if I've lost you, we're coming right back here, right? And it's important to know, this is critical. A lot of studies have been done about race. And from all of them, I can tell you with certainty that race is not an indication of intelligence, aptitude, or ability, right? We are all a part of the human race, and we are all humans. And you can't decipher whether a human is more intelligent than another human based on their race. That's just not a thing. So respecting each other exactly as we are, with all of our differences, is how we make our world a fair place for everyone. Which is where this next term comes in, racism. Let's talk about it. Racism is when someone gets treated wrongly because of their race. So because of the color of their skin, the texture of their hair, their facial features, their eye formation. Sometimes it's easy to see when someone is being treated unfairly. Other times, we really have to pay attention to see it. And this is the case with systemic racism. These types of unfair treatment have been happening for a really long time, and it takes brave people standing up and saying, I see what's happening, and it is not okay. And that's why I put a picture of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in here. He is someone who stood up and said, this is not okay, and I want a different future for my children, right? But did you know that a 1966 Gallup poll before Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated found that almost 2/3 of Americans disapproved of him? That blows my mind. That means you see the people down here, those yellow people, if they were in your classroom, 2 of them would say, I do not like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I do not like his ideas. And only 1 person would say, you know what, I like what he stands for. I say this because change isn't always popular. That's why sometimes it's a little controversial, sometimes a little uncomfortable to talk about, right? Knowing what you believe in and asking questions about the leaders and movements you support will ensure that you're on the right side of history. And racism is still happening today. This isn't something that's over because the civil rights movement is over, right? Black Lives Matter is a direct response to the ongoing racism against Black people in America that's happening right now. That's why that movement is so important, right? And then another one that we don't really talk about as much is the racism against Asian Americans and the Pacific Islanders and their community. COVID has had a significant impact on an uptick in violence and hate crimes against Asian Americans, and that's really atrocious. So we have to be super aware of what's going on in our country and figuring out ways that we can stand up and speak out against those things. So what do you do if you notice something that feels racist, either for yourself or for someone else? It's important that you say something. I know saying something can sometimes be hard. So talk to a teacher, your social worker, or a family member. Basically, anyone who you feel safe saying, this felt weird. Can you help me navigate? It's all up to us to call out racism when it's happening, to make sure that this world is a fair place for everyone. And what next? I have already taken up 9 minutes and 36 seconds of your time. What could possibly be next? Just keep asking questions, everyone. There's a lot going on in the world. It's a little hard to navigate, right? It's okay to not know everything. I couldn't possibly watch the news and take in all of that information without asking some questions. So it's really important that you do that to better understand what's happening so you can make a difference. Now, you can go ahead and pause this, come back to it, but I wanted to kind of provide some space to process this, because tough conversations are something that we need to do and that we need to have, right? But it's important to process after these conversations. So my first question, was there anything that made you feel uncomfortable during this presentation? What was it? What did it feel like? You can pause and talk about it for a second. Next question. Have you ever experienced or witnessed racism? What was that like for you? You can pause. And then finally, what would you do if you saw someone being treated unfairly because of their race? I really hope that you can take this presentation and talk about it and have these uncomfortable conversations. But again, these vocabulary terms are so important, and I really hope that you took something away from this and learned something. If you ever have any questions, your entire DEI committee is here to talk. So please reach out, ask questions.